have Amy joining us today to help us better understand what they are seeing from the federal level. What are the federal policies that's happening right now? How are the various executive orders affecting stakeholders in this the digital opportunity space, and to better help us navigate what to expect in the coming months. We know that this is a space that is very robust and things are shifting constantly, but it's also important to be ahead of the game and understand that. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Amy Huffman, who will be giving us an overview of the policy landscape in Washington, D.C. and beyond. Amy, would you be able to share your slides, or do you want me to share the slides?
I'm happy to. Just give me 1 second to get it pulled up. All right. Can you see that? Yeah? Okay, great. Let me get it in slideshow mode. Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. I think you originally reached out to my colleague, Shauna Edson, who, I'm sure all of you have met in person. And she is on vacation today, so you're stuck with me. But I'm Amy Huffman. I'm the policy director for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. And I've been with NDIA for about 4 years now, and I'm excited to be here. So we'll talk about the Digital Equity Act today. Just a little bit of background. I don't think this crowd needs it, so I'm going to be pretty brief on that part. Then I'll spend most of the time talking about the current state of play and where things are at around the Digital Equity Act. And then I'd like to spend some time walking you through some of the advocacy resources that our team has been uh, very hard at work creating, and that hopefully are a good resource for you all as we all collectively work to move this work forward. Okay, but real quick before I move on, just want to first of all share this really awesome picture of our team that I love, but also give you a little bit of background about NDIA. So in case you're not familiar with us, we're a national nonprofit. We got started about 10 years ago to support community-based organizations across the country who are the boots on the ground doing digital inclusion work every day. Today, we have over 2,000 affiliates in all 50 states, and plus the territories and the District of Columbia, and partnerships with 41 tribal entities across the country. And as you can see, we have a quite large team now. And our work, we really, first and foremost, are a community of practice for our 2,000 affiliates. But we also take what we learn from our affiliates and make sure that the policymakers are hearing about your needs and what's happening on the ground as they make decisions in Washington that affect real life people. And we also take what we hear from Washington and bring it back to you all. So that's what I'm doing today. So we'll talk about the status and updates and potential risks that we see with the Digital Equity Act today. And let me move into that. And I saw that there was a comment in the chat. Just if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me or raise your hand. I can't see you, so I'm not sure if there are questions or if the questions in the chat are, or if there are things in the chat are questions.
Amy, so I'll monitor and let you know if there's anything. But the chat I just put down is just for everyone. It came from me. It's just a reminder that we will be recording this and we'll be sharing this resource with members who are not here today.
Wonderful, thank you. So just as like a quick reminder about the Digital Equity Act programs and how they're structured, because we're going to talk about the weeds, and before we get into the weeds, just giving everyone a reminder. So the Digital Equity Act was passed as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021. Congress gave NTIA, or the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, basically this lump of money and some parameters around how the program should be run. The full Digital Equity Act is 2.75 billion, and it's split into two programs, but three grants. Two of the grants go to states, and the other is a competitive grant. So the states are we're split into the state planning grant and then the state capacity grant. So basically, funding to create a digital opportunity plan or digital equity plan, and then funding to go implement that plan. And as you know, and I'm sure you all were part of helping support the development of the Utah plan, now we're in the implementations phase. And then the other grants are the competitive grants, right? And those were made available to a swath of different types of organizations to go implement digital inclusion programs. And just like a bit of way setting, this is where we've been, right? So again, law passed in 2021. And last fall, the applications were due for the competitive grant program in September. And then all of the state capacity grant applications were approved by December. And then as recent as February, another round of applications closed, and that was for the Native Entities Capacity Grant Program. And what we don't see on here is in January, 65 projects were recommended for award for the competitive grant program. So that gets us into where things are today and what the current status is. And I should say, as you remind folks, I don't work for the government. I don't, everything I share today is our best guess based on, conglomeration of information that we're gathering and synthesizing and trying to read into, right? But this is where things are at. So the full capacity grant program is 1.44 billion, and that's again going to states and territories and tribal entities. What you see here is a breakdown of the funds that went out or were slated to go out in this first round of funding to states, territories, and tribal entities. There are also two future rounds of funding via future notice of funding opportunities or NOFOs that will total $600 million. So what's at risk here? We think, but we're not sure, we think all the states and territories have signed contracts with the NDIA for their capacity grants. Again, for their first tranche, there will be two future tranches. However, I would say we're not 100% sure that all states and territories have a signed contract. So while all of their plans were approved by December, we're not sure if contracts were executed by January. We think most do, or all, but we're not sure. So any state without a signed contract would be at risk. More broadly, as we can see, the work has been slowed down at the federal level. So while there's no official pause, it's definitely slower. I know states have had a hard time getting information from the federal government, both NTIA and then the agency that within Commerce that administers the grants called NIST. I know they've had a hard time getting things approved, and so it's definitely slowed down. So we're already seeing the risk of the work slowing down happening. What might happen in the future once there's a new administrator is there is a possibility that this new administrator could either change the program or veto projects that states submit. We're not sure. The native entity grants are definitely at risk, as if you recall the timeline I just showed you, those applications weren't due until February of this year, which means likely, it's possible that they've been evaluated internally, but none have made it so far as to have been awarded or recommended for award. publicly. So those are all at risk, and that's a total of $45.3 million. And then there's those future NOFOs that I talked about, right? The capacity grant has two future tranches of funding. One was supposed to be this fiscal year, one was supposed to be next fiscal year, totaling $600 million. If you're looking at percentages, states were already granted about 60% of their total funds, and then the two future NOFOs would break down into 20% and 20%, so it'd be 40% total of the total amount that they'd get. Those NOFOs have not, notice of funding opportunities have not been published yet. We fully expect the new administration to alter, edit those notice of funding opportunities if they continue forward with that funding. And it's also possible that they might not continue forward with that funding. We don't know at this point. Okay, and then on the competitive grant side, which is about $1.25 billion, the first tranche, and again, this was split into tranches as well, but this time only two of them, was allocated via the first notice of funding opportunity, again, that closed last fall in September, and was about $1 billion. And again, 65 projects were recommended for award in January 2025. So that totals about 619 million. Now, what we know is that NTIA was working on those on a rolling basis. So there's still, if you do the math, that's a little over 300 and close to 380 million that hasn't been allocated from this first tranche, or recommended for award rather. Our understanding is NTIA was underway and reviewing those applications and making making recommendations. We're not sure where those stand in the process. By process, I mean once the new administration took over. We know of those 65 projects, 4 projects have signed contracts. Of those 4 projects, only one of those projects or organizations has their total funding available to them to be able to move forward with actually implementing their project. We, NDIA, are one of those 4 projects that has a signed contract. The contract is called a CD 450. We are not the ones that can move forward with our project. Ours is fully held up in what are called special award conditions, and we can't draw down any funds until those are resolved. We've provided all of the information to NTIA and are waiting for them to sign off so that we can get our work started, but we're waiting. And then the future NOFO, there's about 250 million left, right? So when we're talking about risks, that is a risk in the future. So again, here's a better breakdown of the risks. Frankly, the competitive grant program as a whole, we think is at risk. Because again, only 4 awards have actual contracts, and only one of them has actually drawn down funds and started fully their work. 2 others have drawn down some funds, but they only have their administrative funds. So this is an area where we think really the entire program is at risk. Even those of us that have signed contracts, and particularly those that don't have signed contracts but were recommended for award, we still think they're those projects would be rescinded, redirected, or reallocated. And then again, there's 381 million that was not allocated from this NOFO yet and still in process. And then there's the future notice of funding opportunity that was 250 million that has not been allocated, or even that is definitely at risk. Okay, so real quick, before I get into resources, 2 other kind of things to know. One is this whole time since the administration changed over, pretty quickly, NTI sits within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Pretty quickly, the administration had secretaries at each agency, and the U.S. Department of Commerce's secretary is Howard Lutnick. And however, the person that oversees the telecommunications work, the broadband work, the digital equity work has not yet been sworn in. She has been confirmed. Her name is Ariel Roth. She came from Senator Cruz's committee staff at which is the Commerce Committee. She came from that staff and has a background in working for the FCC and other telecommunications expertise areas. She has been voted out of the committee. So the Senate Commerce Committee has passed her on to the full Senate to be confirmed. The Senate is out of session until today. They come back next week. The Senate is going, the committee Senate, excuse me, the Senate Commerce Committee is going to take up another candidate next week for the Federal Communications Commission. Her name is Olivia Trusty. I say this because they're going to vote her out of committee next week. We expect them to package Ariel Roth and Olivia Trusty together to be voted on at the same time in the full Senate. So at this point, that could be anywhere as soon as April 31st, which would be next Thursday, or the following week. So we think that could happen pretty soon. Which means once Ms. Roth gets into her seat at NTIA, we will probably start to see things begin moving in either direction or whatever direction pretty quickly. The other things that are happening at the federal level, just to be aware of, is we know that the White House has shared a rescission package with both chambers of Congress of things they would like to rescind from the current budget. I have not been able to get my hands on the bill text of that or what's on that list yet to find out if the Digital Equity Act is on it or not, but I've not heard that it is, so I'm taking that no news is good news for the moment. And then we also know that Congress is working on their budget reconciliation and making cuts to the general budget. And so we at NDIA have been looking at our advocacy work as two-pronged. One, with Congress to make sure that they know the benefits of these programs and don't lump them into cuts that they're making writ large to the federal government budget. And then two, at the agency level with NTIA, once Ariel Roth is in place, you know, there are changes to the program that she can make that would still fall within statute. But unless Congress rescinds it, she doesn't have the authority to just cut the program entirely. But we have been, you know, we see our advocacy as two-pronged. Okay. So to that end, we've created a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot of different advocacy tools and resources for you all to use to contact your elected representatives and advocate for the program writ large. We've got template letters, resources for finding your federal, state, and local elected officials, two-pagers and press release templates and all sorts of things. So I'm going to stop sharing I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to keep sharing my screen. And I'm going to show you a couple of them. So this is our homepage. So you just go to our homepage and you hover over Do the Work and click on Digital Equity Act, which I've already got pulled up here. And I'll just navigate there. And then here are all of our advocacy resources. We have templates, one-pagers, tips and tricks for congressional meetings, talking points for raising awareness. We have a template email letter to your members of Congress. We also have sign-on template letters to your members of Congress so that if you'd like to grab a group of people to sign a letter and send it, you can. Again, a document on how to find your representatives, allocations for each area so that you can share that with your elected member of Congress. And then again, all these other templates. So I'm going to show you two that I have pulled up, but really encourage you to take a look at these and take whatever you want. Use what you'd like and for advocating. So this is the two-pager, and I've got Utah's pulled up here. We've got, you know, just an explanation on what the Digital Equity Act is, why it matters, the expected funding coming into the state, a couple different percentages. So the number of covered populations, the percentage of the population in Utah that fall into the covered population bucket, older adults, rural households, low income, et cetera. And then what would happen, right? What are the impacts if the Digital Equity Act is rescinded? We encourage you to take this and share it with your elected officials and anyone that might benefit from it. The next resource I'm going to show you is this template email or letter to your member of Congress. The way we've created these are so that they're easy to tailor. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to our site, you're going to click on it. It's going to have you create a copy. So then that copy is yours. So you're not actually editing the one that's on our drive. You're editing, this is now your own copy. We've got instructions for how to use the template. And then links to other resources that might help you in the process. So for instance, here, this will take you to a spreadsheet that will show you how much is coming to Utah, which you already know because it's right here on this too. But just in case you didn't, you could insert that here. Anything in this pretty color peach is what you're going to tailor for your community and edit it in a way that represents your work and your community, and send that to your representative or their office. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions. Oh, the last thing I'll say, actually, I didn't share this in the slides, but I will put a link in the chat. Is our annual conference is in less than a month. And if you're not already registered, we'd love to see you there. It's a really wonderful time for community and learning from each other. And I think that's especially needed right now. So I'll make sure that you have a link to that in the chat. And we're still have plenty of room, plenty of space. And so would love for you to join us if you haven't registered. And then the last thing I'll say is if you're not already an affiliate of NDIA, we'd love for you to join us. It's free to join, and it just you're welcomed into a big community of folks that are like-minded folks who do the similar work and can learn from them as well as us. Okay, I will stop and I will share these slides with you all, and I will take any questions you might have.
Anyone has any questions? Robin, you have one?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you so much. That was super, super helpful to get the context of what's going on nationally, understand what we can do to be involved. So thank you so much for that presentation. Really, really valuable information, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. I want to echo Robin's comments. And I do have a few members who really, really want to join today's meeting, but is not able to for various reasons. And they do have a couple of questions that they want me to relate to you. First is that how can we collectively as a coalition, a network, to influence, to make sure that our congressional delegation knows. And then the second question is there one member of a congressional delegation that would be more impactful than others?
Yeah, those are both good questions. Let me pull up something very quickly. I would say you could take two tracks here. One, or actually they're not, I apologize. I'm not very good at walking and chewing gum. So give me 2 seconds to pull up what I'm looking for, and then I can better answer the question. They're not mutually exclusive. I think the two tracks would be one, sending a sign-on letter to your delegation, and as a coalition, gathering member signatures on that, which we have the template on our website, right? Like take that template, tailor it to Utah, send that to your delegation, and have folks sign on to it. And two, in that sign-on letter, request a meeting, request meetings with the staff of your different members of your delegation. And in terms of, and you can do that virtually, right? Like you don't have to be in person. And I think sometimes they actually prefer that. So you probably won't get a meeting with the actual member, and that's okay. Meeting with their staff is still very impactful. But if you get I mean, it's possible you could get a meeting with their member, and if so, that's great. You could also try to get meetings with your members when they're home, right, on recess, which they're coming off recess right now, but they might come back, in the near future. So that's of yeah, definitely recommend that. And then in terms of who, Senator Curtis is on the Senate Commerce Committee, and the Senate Commerce Committee, it has jurisdiction over these issues. So I would definitely reach out to him. And then let me check real quick if there's anyone in the House that I'd focus in on. I don't see anyone in the House that's on. So the House equivalent of Senate Commerce is the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and I don't see anyone from Utah on that. Although what here's my theory right now is that the margins in the House are so slim that all it takes is one or two people to vote in favor of something, or to say, hey, I see this list, I agree with it, but not this program, right? Like let's preserve this one program. So all it takes is one or two members. So even if they're not on committee, I definitely think it's still very much worthwhile reaching out and making sure that they understand the importance of these funds. The last thing I'll say is, like, we've had a lot of meetings with members of Congress in the last few months, and for the most part are not seeing an appetite to rescind or claw back these funds. The word equity is a problem, and it being in the title of the act is something that we're addressing head on when we meet with them. We're saying we understand that this, it's called the Digital Equity Act. Let us tell you about the work and how the work impacts your constituents, and walk them through specific constituents it impacts and how. And then once that happens, there's kind of a light bulb moment, and there's definitely an understanding of the importance.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Amy. I do have a couple of follow-up questions since I received some emails prior to this. Given the Utah situation, we did not, we weren't one of the application that's recommended for funding from the competitive grant. We did receive the capacity grant, the state. Lindsay from a state office is here, and we're moving forward with that. I think from our strategy standpoint is to ask a congressional delegation to move forward with the funding that hasn't been allocated. Is that probably the best strategy for us?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely so. And there are two projects that touch Utah that were multi-state awards that aren't directly coming to Utah-based organizations, but so that's the Emilio project and the IRC, which is International Rescue Commission, I believe.
Yeah, Rescue Committee.
And if you're not already connected with both of them, I'll make sure you get connected with them, because both of those are solid projects that will benefit folks in Utah. Yes, I think I think right now the message is preserve the Digital Equity Act, like preserve the whole thing, help get it moving, make sure that it is moving, because as we all know, the pauses are, rescission is definitely the worst outcome, or deletion, however you want to say it. But the pauses are also really harming organizations as well, and people, right? I mean, we know some of our affiliates have already had to lay off people or close because, you know, not only is this happening, there's other funding that's not coming through, right? So I think advocating for the program as a whole, and, you know, urging them to move forward. And if there are changes that, you know, we want to be part of making those changes and partnering with them on that. But changes are an easier pill to swallow than complete precision.
Thank you, Amy. Lindsay, I know you, and do you have any questions or thoughts?
We love Amy, and you are so smart and amazing. Thank you so much for all of that great information. I guess the only thing that maybe we could add is kind of what UBC is doing on the advocacy side to help with some of this. So Rebecca Dilge, who is the director of the Utah Broadband Center, you know, she is my boss, so she helps oversee all of our digital opportunity work. In addition to the BEAD funding for the infrastructure. She was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and one of the Senate committees said, we'd love to get some state input. And she said, well, I'd love to give you some input. We love Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. So she actually has a meeting set up. She's going to be flying back to Washington, D.C. Over the weekend. So Monday and Tuesday, she'll be meeting with some of the FCC and congressional delegates. I know specifically Senator Curtis is one of those that will be there. She's also participating, so it'll be Utah, Maine, I believe it's Minnesota, and maybe one other state. So she's going to kind of get a front row seat right with some of these decision makers. And her, you know, primarily it's focused on BEAD, but she's also going to be sharing, you know, remember digital equity, remember the great things that are happening here. You know, please be mindful of that. So you know, we really appreciate Rebecca for doing that, and hopefully she'll be able to maybe share some updates on Wednesday or Thursday of next week after she gets back. And let's see, anything else? Yeah, so like just to kind of reiterate what Amy said, our first round of funding is good. Second round is maybe, third round is probably less likely. You know, each step that we kind of take probably is less likely. But second round could happen, you know, possibly. If it does, Utah would be eligible for between 2 and 2.5 million is kind of where we're positioned at. So again, if we get any information on that, we'll absolutely share that. We are really putting a lot of love and energy and good karma towards the release of the second. So, and I'm trying to think anything else. That's, yeah, native entity. We haven't heard anything from any of our state applicants. Competitive, you know, we do have the 2 coalition applications that are out. You know, haven't received any information about that. What I know that we do have some of our competitive applicants that are also applying for the Digital Opportunity Grant, our state capacity grant. And so, you know, please don't feel that you aren't eligible to apply for the state funds if you have a competitive application in. On the application, it will ask you, I believe it's one of the very last pages, it says, you know, have you applied for other NTIA related funding? And so you can indicate that there that, you know, yes, we have a competitive application in or a native entity application. But that won't preclude you from being eligible for state funds. So, yeah, excellent.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for that update as well. I know that this is a collective effort, and we really thank the state office for being such a great partner and leader in supporting our state's efforts and making sure that we remain in the top and fighting the good fight to retain those fundings available. Robin, you have your unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to support the idea of the UDON members coming together and doing one of those sign-on letters or things like that. What great resources that Amy's provided. So I just want to give a vote for that idea and doing whatever we can as a collective group. We have a lot of members, and just helping our congressional delegation understand how many organizations, but how many, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals would benefit with this work moving forward in the state. So I'd love to say, let's go forward with that advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And this is one of the reasons why we invited Amy to come and speak with us today, so that we can provide members a better understanding of the resources available through NDIA. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have great resources out there. And our goal in the next 2 weeks is to get a sign-on letter that we can send to all of the Udon members for signage, and piggybacking on Amy's recommendations, perhaps as a coalition request a meeting with Senator Curtis, to just let him know that this is something that is important to his constituency in the state of Utah, and Udon does make up of members throughout the state, and this is important not just in terms of access to to broadband access to technology, but it's also about workforce development, right? And Robin, really the key component on this is that at the end of the day, when we talk about digital equity, is about the livelihood for people who are living here in Utah, and helping them to have the economic mobility so that they can have a thriving life, which is one of the other things that another question for Amy is in terms of how do we approach this in more of build additional coalitions or alliances with other folks. I was in Washington, D.C. and in New York and in Philadelphia just this week. We're on Friday. I forget what day of the week it is. And one of our big partners that the Central work with is the National Skills Coalition, which digital equity is a big component of their work. And I have joined them in the past with the Skills Summit in Washington, D.C. And they are having theirs in 1 week. And so I think that those are really natural alliances. So I remember going to Washington, D.C. and meeting with NDIA and making sure that they understand. Is there other advocacy groups nationally that you think we should also reach out to and build some alliance with, Amy?
Yeah, National Skills Coalition is great. Actually have a call with Amanda this afternoon to talk about advocacy together. If you're not already connected to the Shelby Coalition, so the Schools Health Library Broadband Coalition, they're definitely another great ally. And there's a broadband mapping coalition, which they do advocacy around mapping. I'm trying to think of others. I think those would be the two I'd suggest for now. But you can also just know that we coordinate nationally with those organizations as well, and a lot of other public interest partners. Like Common Sense Media and Public Knowledge and AARP and the Benton Institute. So we coordinate with a lot of those folks to do advocacy as well. But those that are like open for local partners, I think would be the Shelby Coalition and the Broadband Mapping Coalition.
That's great. Well, say hi to Amanda for me. I will. From the National Skills Coalition this week. Is there any other questions? If not, I don't want to hold up people's Friday. I want to thank Amy Huffman for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We will be sending out your resources, if that's okay, Amy, to your slide deck. And again, this is recorded and will make this available to our Udon members. But we want to really thank you for your time and your resources. And thank you everyone for joining us for this month's Udon resource meeting.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It was lovely to see you all.
Thank you.